All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Commercial Corner. Today we have Scott Smith with us, and he is going to talk about putting a marketing package together for your listings.
Hey, how is everyone? Awesome. Is everyone in the room, Jen? Do you know?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So we're just gonna rock and roll. All right, so this is entitled Creating Your Marketing Package, which I'm sure that some of you may have some questions about. Whenever you get a commercial listing, there's a bunch of information that we need to gather and get together. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk briefly about today. Just kind of some of the ingredients is what should be in a marketing package, what should, how to get there, how to collect it, some differences between the marketing. Jen, can you forward this slide? The difference between the market analysis and the marketing plan, they are not the same. And then also your value proposition as you're doing some commercial sale transactions, which are significantly different, but yet the same from doing a commercial leasing transaction. Okay. All right. So let's jump right in. You may have heard this described as a property information package or a PIP. Anyone want to take a guess as to why a property information package may be needed? Anyone? Okay. No one wants to take a guess as to why a property information package would be needed. That's all right. I'll tell you.
Get information on the property.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Clayton. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like you wouldn't just go and arbitrarily look at houses without seeing any information about the property, right? You would want to know a little bit of details and background. And so that's kind of what this is to really take a look and say, hey, is this something that is worth us investing 6, 8, 10, 12 months of our life into seeing if we're even going to take this down. A lot of agents will think that just the information in the MLS is what is needed to put together a property information package. It is not. So I wanted to create a list and kind of go through that as to what are some of the ingredients and how to collect and show a pretty good example of a property information package. So real quick, we have, a site description as to the location of the property. You would want to include some location maps. You would want to look at any competition in the area. So when I say competition, I don't mean brokerage competition. I mean competing properties in the area. So what other next best alternatives would someone looking to buy this specific property be interested in looking at also? Okay. So it's not a broker competition, but a property competition. If there's other properties that are on the market that they're competing with, it's just kind of like what you guys would do, probably based upon a zip code or maybe even a street address. So that's kind of what we mean by competition. And then an analysis of the surroundings. This may be typographical. This may be geopolitical. Local economy info. That's generally going to be regional, especially in areas where you're not going to have as detailed local economy information down to a zip code. So major employers in the area. Anyone want to guess why you would want to list the major employers in an area in the property information package?
Non-competing clauses, maybe?
Thank you, Wendy. That could be one of the reasons, non-competing clauses. Also, you would want to see how many jobs currently are in the area. When you start looking at site development, you start looking at it. This goes for all types of commercial, whether it be retail, office, industrial. It's all based, commercial is all based upon employment data. So more jobs, it goes jobs, people, houses, retail. So when you're looking at a major area development, you're going to say how many jobs are in the area, or how many jobs can we create for that area. And then based upon the amount of money that those jobs pay, what is the housing demand in that area? What is the housing supply? And then you would look to see, is that an overserved or underserved market for the housing? And then based upon the amount of roofs, is what we call it, then we'd say how much retail is in the area for those homeowners to fill their homes with all the goodies that we like to buy. So the major employers in the area, it's really looking at the jobs and what type of jobs, what median household income could be achieved in that area. If you're looking at things like building a apartment complex, right? It's very interesting, just as a side note. So when you start really understanding how markets work and how they interact with residential, you can drive down an area and just by looking at the types of retail in that area will give you a general idea as the median household income and the value of the local residential homes. Because the retailers will specifically put stores in certain demographic locations that they know that those people in that demographic study are going to buy their products, right? So Home Depot will know generally how many people are going to shop at their stores before they even put the store in that location. Local politics, as you can imagine, all politics are local. So you would want to know if your local county is opposed to development or not, if they are going to fight new developers to get new roads or traffic lights, or maybe they just oppose the development process altogether. So you would want to know that before you kind of want to really go and spend a long time in developing a site. Aerial photos, you can get those from, Google Earth, ground photos, traffic counts. Has anyone heard the term traffic count? And we don't necessarily mean traffic count as in what you probably would think of in digital marketing. Has anyone heard the words traffic count in their marketing studies before? No? So a traffic count, you've probably participated in these before and you may have not even been aware of. Have you ever driven across the road and there's like those two ropes that are across the road that lay on the concrete and you're wondering why they're there? Or you've seen someone sitting at an intersection in a vehicle counting cars? That's exactly what they're doing. They're doing traffic count studies to determine how many cars a day go by that intersection or that location, so that they'll know based upon traffic flows and based upon ingress and egress if a new development in that area can sustain itself. So retailers will say, I need to have 10,000 people within a 3-minute drive time of this store. So what they'll do is they'll take traffic counts at several different locations to determine how the traffic is moving and determine how much traffic is going to be going by any given area at any given time of the day. So now with satellite imagery and stuff, it's a little bit easier, and you don't see those guys and gals hanging out at the corner with the clickers anymore. But you still will probably occasionally drive over the traffic counters in the middle of the road and not even realize it. So as technology has made things more efficient, now they can literally just attach them to a guardrail and count cars going either side of the road, which is really interesting stuff whenever you start thinking about it, because you would think that the same traffic count going on one side of the street would be the same traffic count going the opposite direction in a later time of the day. However, what we're finding is morning traffic is generally heavier and evening traffic is generally lighter. So there's not really any good reason as to why those traffic counts change, but we believe it to be people are just going and doing errands after work, right? And so retailers, again, will say, I need a traffic count of 3,000, like 7-Eleven will be like, I need a traffic count of no less than 15,000 cars a day, for example. So you'll know if you're looking at a site selection and their traffic count is 2,000, well, that your client, if you're representing 7-Eleven, your client wouldn't even consider going there because the numbers aren't going to work for what they need it to be. The traffic count is too light. So traffic counts are a big thing when we're looking at property information packages. And then a general fact sheet like age, zoning, and that kind of stuff. Demographics, which are a little bit harder to come by. And then absorption rate. These are all things that we have to get together, put together, spend our time researching when we are representing a client in a certain property, okay? Let me see. Yeah, let's go to the Harrisburg one. I kind of want to show them what that's going to look like. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so this is a study that I completed over a year ago. So the information is no longer valid, just so you know. And these things you have to kind of update almost annually. As you can see, it's 23 pages long. And I did this when we were looking at the Harrisburg office for Berkshire. Here's a table of contents, statistics, leasing, rent, construction, under construction, sales for the past 12 months, economy, markets, submarkets, supply and demand trends, rent and vacancy, sale trends. These are all things that you're going to want to know if you're going to look at putting an office or a retail or, you know, any type of commercial property in a certain area. So you need to have these data points available for your clients, because this is the kind of stuff that they're going to look for, or excuse me, the buyers, this is the kind of stuff they're going to look for when they are looking at specific locations. Okay, go to the next. Okay, so let's look at the overview here. Now, again, this is from a year ago, so just stick with me. 12 months delivery in SF was square foot, 28.7. Look at this. You'll find this kind of interesting if you're a numbers geek like myself. 12 months net absorption in square foot, minus 185,000. If you have a negative net absorption, is that a strong or a soft market? Anyone want to guess? A negative net absorption means they're giving square footage back onto the market. So more square footage is getting added to the market than is getting subtracted from the market, right? So if you were looking at building a location and it had negative net absorption, you would know that's probably a market that's really soft. It's going to take a while for this square footage to get leased up or purchased or removed from the market in some other way before your property would adequately have an opportunity to get absorbed. Okay. Vacancy rate 6.9. I'm sure you all know what a vacancy rate is. It's the ratio of the property that is not income producing. And then 12-month rent growth, 0.2%. Not the greatest. See the sales volume, 143 million. Vacancy rate, the vacancy portion of that is worth 65 million. And then availability rates, 243.8 million. So as you can see, this is just a quick overview of what the Harrisburg office market looks like. Continuing on, this describes the leasing and how it relates to the rest of the United States. As you can see, oddly enough, in Harrisburg, it was a lot lower than the rest of the United States. They also had a lot less net deliveries. So all in all, it was not affected that greatly by COVID, which was this. I think this report is dated 2021, January 21. I think is the date I did this. Yeah, January 25, 2021. So that was kind of right in everyone's trying to figure out what's going on after the lockdown. How is it affecting everything? So this area didn't see a major vacancy. So people were just kind of holding on, right? As you can see, the leasing, Harrisburg was at, the vacancy rate was at 6, whereas the United States at this time was at about 11%. So it fared very well given the overall conditions of the rest of the country. You see the availability rate, though, this is the issue. Because it fared very well, there were not a lot of opportunities for a move-up potential. As you can see, it's actually significantly less, the availability rate. This would be 12-month net absorption and the locations for the competition to show you who's adding and who's subtracting and what their vacancy is. You'll see in Camp Hill, right in the center there, for those in our Camp Hill office, during this period, Harrisburg area west, there was 214,000 building square footage available and 165,000 vacant square footage, which I thought was really significant. But not as much as Strawberry Square. I've never been to Strawberry Square, so I don't even know what that is. So if you've been there, reach out and tell me what you think. But 1.2 million building square footage and only 862 vacant square foot. So that was phenomenal. So at the bottom there, you'll see the total Harrisburg market and for the building square footage and the amount of vacancy square footage. As you can see, there's negative numbers. It's not good. other leasing addresses that you're going to want to be familiar with, and when they were leased up and who the tenant is. You'll also see who the leasing rep company is. So that's important from a competition standpoint. How much square footage they lease? It looks like 1531 Sand Hill Road, St. Joan of Arc Catholic Church, leased 110,000 square feet. So this would also tell you the companies that are moving pretty heavily in the area. As you see, there's not a lot of big movers. It's the 110,000, and you got a couple 10 to 20,000. But the majority of those transactions are under 10,000 square feet. You'll see that based upon this data. What does that tell you? Well, that tells me if I have a bigger property that I need to get leased up, it may not behoove me to subdivide it into smaller units because there's not that many available big properties in this market. That's what that tells me. So just things to think about. Okay, moving on. Rent rates, expected growth, what the forecast is. You'll see in 2016, for some reason, Harrisburg like really took a dive, like lost a lot of rent growth. I don't know what happened in 2016 there. If anybody does, feel free to tell me. But it looks like even in 2021, which was when this report was created, it was still at 0% rent growth and expected to trail slightly behind the national average. So just things to think about when you're looking at rent growth for potential areas. Like, is this area going to be good for rent growth? Am I going to make more money? Looks like Harrisburg, and this one is about $18 a square foot, and the national average is 34. I don't know if that holds true, but it looks like they combined the Harrisburg and Carlisle markets into the same, mainly because Carlisle is a smaller market and it's kind of just a west subsidy of the Harrisburg market. So you'll see Harrisburg is predominantly the main market indicator in this area. Okay. Construction is important to know because if you have a lot of new construction in the pipeline, when they're going to get delivered, all of that information is great to know because you're going to want to make sure that by the time your buyer is either developing or is opening their doors, that they're not going to have an oversaturated market. So under construction properties, here's where the map kind of goes into play, where it looks like there's 4 major properties that are under construction consisting of 160,000 square feet. They're 93% pre-leased. It's pretty significant. And then it's got the addresses down there, what their rating is, what the building square footage is. Again, this is all information that you're going to want to find and put together for your property information package. Sales activity. You'll find this really interesting. Look at the forecast and sales volume. It's like nothing. I'm not sure why that is. I think it's because nobody knew what the effects of COVID were going to bring. And so it was kind of a wait and see approach. Sales the past 12 months, 123 comps, average cap rate. I think we've talked about this before, cap rates and averages and investments, 10% in Harrisburg, average price per square foot, 102, and average vacancy at sales, 16%. This is where you would derive your investment values from, that whole data line right there. The cap rate, the average price per square foot, and the vacancy rate. If you know that information, you can potentially arrive at a full investment analysis. Okay, moving on. Sales comps, not unlike that you're not going to do in your residential world. We just look at different data. Instead of bedrooms, bathrooms, that kind of stuff, we look at building square footage and vacancy rates and the price. Looks like South Cameron Street sold for $20.5 million. That seems fun. 14 to, yeah. So some pretty good significant transactions there. Now, when we talk about the local economies, this is what we're talking about. When I said it's all jobs related, it's how we build our information on employment centers. This is actually breaks down to the NAICS code, which is the basic this type of business that the government says you operate. And then they group all that together and they say, we have so much businesses of this SIC code in this area. And that's how they determine if a market is underperforming or overperforming based upon the amount of business data and activity reported from each type of business. So based upon that information, it looks like trade, transportation, and utilities 71, and the lowest is information technology, and education and health services 60. So I don't know if that holds true, but that's kind of how we look at the employment industry data together. Okay. Here's the economy. You'll find this, if you're a graphs person, you'll find this interesting. Look at this. Look at January of 2020. That's when everything shut down. No one, look how quick that is. It's just like, it was just going along for 5 years and then just boom, right? And then the slow growth going back up. And the funny thing about this is that when I'm looking at the job growth overall, this is actually pretty dead on. But this was forecast. So you hear all this new jobs creation and stuff like that in the national news, right? Yeah, that is true. I mean, there was a lot of new jobs created, but this was already forecasted out. But you'll see it has been leveled off, which is what they've been expecting for some time. So we're slightly below where we were pre-pandemic on the employment numbers. Okay, population growth. That's a good, Jen, go up just slightly. Population growth, labor force growth, and income growth. Income growth is a big one if you're looking at how much money people have to spend. Great question, Amanda. We're actually going to get to that. You actually don't make this on RPR. This is actually a downloaded report from CoStar. So that is where all this information, where I get all this information from. I do have a slide coming up that tells you where you can get the information from if you don't subscribe to CoStar. I'm not endorsing everyone to subscribe to CoStar. Would not ever do that. I'm just giving you the information that's expected in the property information packages. So don't take me using CoStar data as an endorsement of that, or RPR or LoopNet or any other service. It's not really needed. There's other sources you can go to, which we're going to get to. Oh, heavens. Sorry. All right, construction data. Yeah, we talked about that. Past 12 months. Keep going. We're at the economy. Yep. Okay. Submarkets for the economy. Scroll down there. you'll see how they break down different regions. So Harrisburg is split into two, which included Hershey. And then you have Shippensburg and Carlisle all in one market. So that's where they kind of, you see Gettysburg is not included in there, nor is York. So if you were to look up York, PA, it probably would include Gettysburg. And actually, I do think it does, because each region is specific. So, and none of these include Lancaster. So Lancaster operates on its own. Here's what the sub-market breakdown is, if you're interested in that. Depends on, again, where your property would be located. Supply and demand, this is it, all of it right here. This is the whole kit caboodle. Overall supply and demand for 2021, negative. You have an overserved market, but look at 2022. Square footage comes back, so it's good. Again, this is all for office properties. You may have a total different results if you're looking at industrial or if you're looking at retail. I'm not even going to get into the apartment buildings because that's a whole different way of doing that. But this is just for office properties. All right, rent and vacancy. Again, we talk about square footage, the price, how much vacancy, the percent change, how much you can expect per square foot. So in 2021, office rents in Harrisburg market, which included Shippensburg, included Carlisle. In 2021, we were looking at $17.86. In 2022, we were looking at $18.66, and so on and so forth. So it kind of gives you a good future rent projection. Sale trends, we do that in millions in square feet, and then we break it down in a price per square foot. So in 2020, the price per square foot, you'll find this interesting, was $112. However, when this report was ran, it was $78. So because of COVID, they lost 40% average price per square foot. Sale trends, yes, let's continue on with that. Okay. So back to the PowerPoint. So that is how and all the information that you want to get together to entice people, to bring them in based upon your marketing efforts, okay? Let's say, kind of like role play it out. So you have the listing, you've created all this research and data points and put it together in a beautiful marketing package. And then you have someone that says, okay, I want to make an offer, and you negotiate a letter of intent, and then they say, I need these things. And you thought all your research was done, right? So these are, we call these DD requirements, due diligence requirements, right? If anyone remembers, how long does due diligence take? Anyone? Does anyone remember? It's a trick question. It's all right. If you're representing the seller, you want the due diligence to be real short. And if you're representing the buyer, you want it to be real long. Okay. This is a list of actual DD requirements on a deal that I'm working on right now. So this isn't like arbitrary information. This is like what is going down right now. As you can see, leases and any addendums. It's a shopping center, by the way. Leases and any addendums. Most recent title report, environmental reports. Anyone want to guess why they would need a environmental report? Anyone? So
you say environmental reports, do you mean like underground tanks and like things that may have leaked into the dirt and then all that stuff?
Exactly, Melissa, exactly. So lenders generally will not lend on contaminated properties. So they have to do an environmental report with the Environmental Protection Agency to determine the appropriate level of contamination available and plans to remediate if it exceeds that threshold. The most recent surveys of the property, any as-built drawings or construction plans, which would be usually in a CAD file, or an architect or an engineer at some point had to have some kind of plans in order to have that building or structure there. A current certificate of occupancy and any improvement, the current rent roll, operating systems and maintenance contracts, current real estate and school tax invoices, general ledgers for 3 years trailing, any accounts receivables files, insurance certs, utility bills usually trailing for 12 months to 3 years, and any copies of permits and land use, and any copies of any brokerage contracts. Has anyone ever had any other due diligence requests? That was a tongue twister. You can see these are for the property specific, right? Whereas before we were talking about the area information and the market information, these are the property specific requests now. So this is the information you're going to want to get from the sellers specific to that asset. How about lead paint? That's not on there. Flood zones, right? You would want to know if this is in a 100-year floodplain. That's important, especially in our low-lying areas on, creek beds and waterfront properties. So this is a list of information you need to get together on the property, okay? We know those as DD requirements. Okay, moving on. So where do you get the data was the question. Some data you can get from the MLS. You might have that as Bright. And then obviously CoStar and LoopNet, if you subscribe to them. And then the MDOT is what they call it in Maryland, but I don't know what they call it in Pennsylvania. Department of Transportation. What is the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation? Anyone?
PennDOT.
What's that?
PennDOT.
PennDOT? Oh, okay. Well, that's self-explanatory. Should have guessed that one. Yeah, so you can go and put in addresses, and they will give you the traffic count of the, and then they'll usually date, like what date the traffic count was taken and what the results of the traffic count were. And then this is where I'm saying you don't need CoStar and LoopNet. What you need is to go take your local economic development council person out to lunch and say, what's going on in the area? Here's what we're thinking about doing. What do you think? And those, the local economic development of your municipality, they usually know who the major employers are, companies that are looking to be in the area, properties that are coming available. I'll never forget, I went to a local economic development council meeting for Aberdeen, Maryland, and we were putting in a 25,000 square foot church. And I identified one property in the market. We put a letter of intent on it. And I said, before we go any further, let's go meet with the economic development council person, make sure that they're going to approve the project. They're going to make sure that they're on our team, they're on our side. And we get there and the lady goes, hey, I was just looking around the community and we think it would be great if you guys could put a church here. And it was the property that we put the letter of intent on, right? That was powerful, right? So you want those people on your side, and then from that point forward, anytime a problem arose, they were quickly corrected. So that's where you go to get all this local data. That's the trick that not many people will tell you. So for the cost of a lunch, you get a friend and a bunch of data. And that's how commercial business gets done. Or you call appraisers and attorneys. Now, appraisers call brokers, and then brokers call appraisers, and it's a symbiotic relationship back and forth. Same thing with attorneys, and then any state tax records that you may be able to put your hands on. I know in Maryland we have a SDAT website, which stands for State Department of Asset and Taxation, and you just put in the property address, and it'll give you who owns it, all the information about the property. Basically, very similar to what your tax records in Bright look like, just maybe a little bit more detailed because there's maps and things. So that's where you get the data. Hopefully I answered your question about making this on RPR. You can, I honestly would probably make it into a website or make it into a high resolution PowerPoint. Myself, that's kind of what I do. Which, before we talk about the value proposition to your buyers, Jen, you want to pull up the Cromwell? Yeah, that one. Okay, so this is an example of a property that I was looking at. And you can see whenever I say how it all comes together, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So this is the level of expectation that you would want to achieve when you're putting together your marketing package. So that was the cover property, and then confidential information, broker contact information, and table of contents, executive summary, building overview, market overview, which includes the regional, trade area, and demographics. This was for a potential church as well. It talks about the previous company. Building overview, it's got photos in there. Okay, hold here for a second, where they talk about the property address, the parcel, the acreage, the building size, how many stories it is, the zoning. Parking spaces is huge because different tenants or different buyers are going to have different parking requirements. Okay, so a church has to have one parking space for every 2 seats. Okay, shopping centers typically have to have a ratio of 1 per 1,000. So for every 1,000 square feet, they have to have 1 parking spot. Okay. So parking spaces are huge. I can't tell you how many times a deal goes south because of this, because not having enough parking. And then the plumbing, public water, sewer, and any highlights that you may have. Building includes administrative areas, classrooms, a 42-bed residential care, a gym, a commercial kitchen, and then the zoning and what it's allowed for. And then some of the property specifics like the interior, the roofing, the lighting, the windows, the ceiling height, 8 to 10 foot. If your client has a 14-foot ceiling height requirement, this building won't work for them without a lot of modifications in construction. Okay. Electrical information, electrical service, HVAC information, as to the tonnage, as for each room, how much it is, plumbing, gas types. This is all building specific information. In lieu of having a floor plan, you could do it this way and just number out the classrooms and that kind of stuff. But I think this does have a floor plan. Yeah, there it is. So it kind of shows you, but it's not an architectural design, right? You can see this is not a professional floor plan, but it'll get you close. You'll kind of get an idea. Oh, this is what it is. You can see there's mezzanine levels, the lower level, second floor office space, lower levels. I guess the number 33 would be like the gym. So it's important that the tenant can kind of see how their building would lay out. And then kind of like what their expenses are, what the detailed breakdown of receivable amounts are, ownership information, the tax assessment, the land acreage, zoning maps, and what each little bit information about each one. And then, you know, area photos, and then, hey, look at this. Doesn't this information look familiar? Right? We all get it from the same place. Net absorption markets, competition. Look at all this. Different sites, who the major tenants are. Demographics, residential population in a 1 mile, number of households, average household size, median age. Hey, just wondering, on the residential world, do y'all study this stuff? No? That's probably good, because you could probably get in trouble if you did that. In commercial, we're not doing our job if we don't study demographic reports. Because we need to know who's moving where and how many people are in the area, how much money does people make, to determine if our clients are going to be successful if we put locations there. Otherwise, all we've done is put you out of business slowly. Nobody wants that, right? But I do find it interesting that a lot of residential agents don't know how much housing inventory is in their area and what the absorption rate is. So I find that information to be kind of like interesting. I would think if my job was to sell a house, I would probably want to know how many houses are in that area, right? So kind of the same thing as us with shopping centers. That's why when clients call me and they're like, oh, I'm looking for a 50,000 square foot building in this area, you know, I want to move next year. And I'm like, you may want to move in like 10 years because the building doesn't exist, right? You got to know your markets, just like you got to know your residential markets. You got to know your commercial markets, and hopefully putting together all this information and data, if you don't know, may at least make you look like you do, right? Which will give us to our value proposition. What would be your value proposition, do you think, right? On the commercial sales side. For those of you that have done commercial sales for Berkshire in the room, what would you consider your value proposition to your clients? And can you verbalize it? Okay, it's all right. That's why I put together this. That's why I put together this slideshow, right? So you can actually like verbatim say, you know, hey, we have a whole team of professional people. We can probably represent you and have a better understanding of the local markets, the ins and outs of the local markets. You can know the terms and the rates on that data sheet. You don't need to dictate the time and research to find the right market and the right property. We have the ability, tools, and resources to do that for you, right? That would be your value proposition for buyers. Different value proposition for sellers, kind of, right? It's exactly the same, but different. Because always never happens in commercial. Okay, next one. Yes, thank you, Shane. Shane says, while we don't drop the absorption rate number, we do, oh, it went away. We do go over competition and how many offers the last home sold, received, etc. That's good. That's awesome. That's exactly what you should do. Your value proposition for sellers: know the market, know your comparable properties, and you can ensure that they are pricing it properly and they're not just doing a swag. If you want to know what a swag is, email me. You will help them understand any concessions that are expected. So you'll know, hey, here's what you're going to have to give. Like, I'm having an uncomfortable conversation with a client right now on a concession expectation. You know how to find prospective buyers and ensure that they have finances in order, because you have pre-qualified buyers waiting and chomping at the bit. And you can continue to focus on their business while you take the care of getting their property sold. That's the value proposition for sellers. Okay. And lastly, any questions? How do we do on time? We're good? Was it too long, too short? Right about where we needed to be. Okay, I want to open the floor to any questions that you may have now. If you do, put them in the chat room and we can answer them. Hopefully this was at least informative to you, so you can kind of see the information that we have to get together and make it presentable for the public when they are looking to acquire assets. And if you need any help with that, I would say start with that list on the data resources and call your local economic development council members and get to know them, take them out to lunch, get to know the local areas in which you are conducting business. Last questions, comments, concerns, anyone? Well, alrighty then. If there's no questions, I'm going to turn it over to Jen.
All right, all of those items are already in our Google Drive file. So if you guys are going into Home Sale Center, clicking career development and going into Commercial Corner, you already have access to the PowerPoint and both of the presentations that Scott actually put together as samples. And then we will upload the recording once that finishes rendering too, so that you guys have access to that as well. All right, awesome. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.